The scar on Zara Nolan's face ran from her left temple to her jawline, a twisted reminder of the stagecoach accident that had killed her husband and left her broken in ways that went far deeper than flesh. She stood on the dusty main street of Silver Peak, Nevada in the scorching summer of 1878, clutching the deed to a failing dry goods store she had inherited from a distant uncle, and wondered if God had saved her life only to make her suffer through it alone. The doctor in Sacramento had told her the truth with clinical detachment. The injuries to her hip and leg meant she would walk with a pronounced limp forever. The scarring across her face would never fade. Her husband had been dead 3 months when his mother delivered the final blow. Standing in the doorway of the house, Zara was being forced to leave. "No man will ever want you now," the older woman had said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "You are damaged goods. Thomas was your only chance, and now even that is gone." Zara had believed her. How could she not? She was 24 years old, scarred, limping, and widowed. The mirror showed her a monster where a woman used to be. So she had taken the only escape offered, packed her few belongings, and traveled to this God-forsaken mining town in the middle of Nevada's harshest territory, where silver dreams died as quickly as they were born. The store was in worse condition than she had imagined. Dust coated every surface, the inventory was outdated and sparse, and the roof leaked in 3 places. Zara stood in the middle of the chaos, her hip already aching from the journey, and felt the familiar weight of despair settling over her shoulders like a heavy wool blanket in summer heat. "You the new owner?" The voice came from the doorway, deep and smooth as aged whiskey. Zara turned, her hand instinctively rising to cover the scarred side of her face, a habit she had developed in recent months. The man standing in the threshold was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore dusty trail clothes and had the weathered look of someone who spent more time under open sky than beneath a roof. His hat was in his hands, a gesture of respect that surprised her. "I am," Zara said, her voice coming out harder than she intended. She had learned to build walls quickly, to strike before anyone could reject her first. "And the store is not open for business yet." "Was not looking to buy anything," the man said, stepping inside despite her tone. "Name's Isaiah Anderson. I run cattle through this territory, and I had an arrangement with your uncle. He'd order specific supplies for my men when we came through, saved us a trip to Carson City." "My uncle is dead," Zara said flatly. "I know. I am sorry for that. He was a good man." Isaiah's eyes were direct, meeting hers without flinching, without sliding away to avoid looking at her scar. It was so unexpected that Zara felt her carefully constructed armor crack just slightly. "I was hoping we might continue the arrangement. My crew will be coming through in about 6 weeks, and we will need supplies. I can give you the list now, pay half up front to help you get inventory." Zara wanted to refuse. She wanted to tell him to take his charity and leave. But the practical part of her brain, the part that had kept her alive through grief and pain, recognized an opportunity. "I do not need your pity," she said instead. Isaiah's eyebrows rose. "Good, I was not offering any. I need supplies, you have a store. That is business, not pity." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket and set it on the dusty counter. "Think about it. I will be at the Lucky Strike Saloon most evenings this week if you decide you want the work." He settled his hat back on his head and turned to leave, but paused at the door. "For what it is worth, your uncle talked about you sometimes. Said you had a head for numbers and a good heart. Those are valuable things out here." Then he was gone, boot heels echoing on the wooden boardwalk outside. Zara stood alone in the dusty store, staring at the paper he had left behind. Her hands were shaking, though she could not say why. No one had spoken to her like that since the accident. No one had looked at her like she was simply a person, not a tragedy or a cautionary tale. She unfolded the paper and studied the list. It was extensive but reasonable, the kind of order that would indeed require advance notice. The numbers in her head calculated profit margins automatically, and she realized this one order could keep her afloat for months if she managed it correctly. She spent the rest of that day cleaning, her hips screaming in protest with every movement. By sunset, she had cleared enough space to take inventory of what remained. It was worse than she thought. She would need to place orders immediately, use nearly every cent she had saved, and pray that Isaiah Anderson was good for his word. The next morning, Zara woke before dawn, her body aching but her mind clearer than it had been in months. She had a purpose now, something beyond simple survival. She dressed carefully, pinning her honey-colored hair back severely and choosing a high-collared dress that covered as much of her scar as possible. The walk to the telegraph office was slow, her limp more pronounced in the morning, but she kept her chin up and ignored the stares of early risers. She spent the morning sending orders to suppliers in Carson City and Sacramento, spending money that terrified her to spend. If this failed, she would have nothing. But if she did not try, she would have nothing anyway. The logic was inescapable. You must be the new store owner. A woman's voice interrupted her thoughts as she made her way back down the main street. The speaker was perhaps 40, with kind eyes and a practical dress. "I am Margaret Chen. My husband and I run the restaurant 2 doors down from your store." Zara braced herself for the usual reaction, the barely concealed horror or exaggerated pity. But Margaret simply smiled. "I wanted to introduce myself and let you know that if you need anything, we are happy to help. Silver Peak can be rough on newcomers, but it does not have to be lonely." "Thank you," Zara managed, caught off guard by the genuine warmth. "I also wanted to warn you," Margaret continued, her voice lowering slightly. "Isaiah Anderson is a good man, one of the best around here. But there are some women in town who have set their caps at him, and they do not take kindly to competition." "I am not competition," Zara said quickly, heat rising in her cheeks. "He simply wanted to place an order." Margaret's smile turned knowing. "If you say so." "But I saw how he stopped by your store yesterday within an hour of you arriving. That man has not shown that much interest in anything but his cattle in the 3 years I have known him." She patted Zara's arm gently. "Just be careful, and remember, you have friends if you need them." Zara watched her walk away, confusion warring with something that might have been hope if she allowed herself to feel such dangerous things. She returned to her store and threw herself into work, scrubbing and organizing until her hands were raw and her hip was on fire. The physical pain was easier to deal with than the emotional kind. 3 days later, Isaiah returned. Zara was on a ladder, attempting to fix one of the roof leaks with supplies she barely knew how to use. She heard the door open but did not look down, focused on hammering a patch into place. "That is not going to hold," Isaiah said from below. "It will have to," Zara replied, gritting her teeth as she missed the nail and hit her thumb instead. She bit back a curse. "Come down from there before you hurt yourself worse." "I am perfectly capable of managing my own store, Mr. Anderson. Never said you were not. But that does not mean you have to do everything alone." His voice was patient but firm. "Come down and I will fix your roof properly. You can pay me back in coffee and conversation." Zara wanted to refuse, but her thumb was throbbing, and she could feel the ladder wobbling beneath her. Pride was all well and good until it got you killed. She climbed down carefully, very aware of Isaiah's presence at the base of the ladder, his hands hovering near her waist as if ready to catch her if she fell. I do not have any coffee, she admitted once she was safely on the ground. Then just conversation will do. Isaiah smiled, and it transformed his face completely. Zara felt something flutter in her chest, something she had thought died with Thomas. She pushed it down ruthlessly. Isaiah climbed the ladder with easy confidence and examined her attempted repairs. You have the right idea, but the wood is too thin. It will warp with the first rain. I have better materials at my camp. Let me bring them by tomorrow and I will fix this properly. Why would you do that? Zara asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. What do you want from me? Isaiah looked down at her, his expression serious. Nothing you are not willing to give. I am offering help because this town needs a functioning dry goods store and because I was raised to lend a hand when one is needed. That is all. That is never all, Zara said bitterly. Everyone wants something. Isaiah climbed down and faced her directly. You are right. I do want something. I want to place my order and know it will be filled reliably. I want this town to have services that make life easier. And maybe, if I am being honest, I want to have a conversation with someone who does not treat me like a prize bull at auction. He said that last part with a wry twist to his mouth that told her Margaret had been right about the attention he received. Zara found herself laughing, a rusty sound that surprised them both. I suppose that is fair enough. Good. I will be back tomorrow morning with supplies, and maybe you will tell me your name since you know mine. Zara. Zara Nolan. Zara, he repeated, as if testing how it felt in his mouth. That is a good name. Strong. He left before she could respond, and Zara stood in her dusty store, touching her scarred cheek and wondering what was happening. No one had called her strong since the accident. Most people could barely look at her. But Isaiah had looked directly at her, had spoken to her like an equal, and it terrified her how much she wanted him to come back. True to his word, Isaiah arrived the next morning with an armful of quality lumber and proper roofing materials. He worked through the morning heat, his shirt growing damp with sweat while Zara organized inventory below and tried not to watch him too obviously. When he finished, he climbed down and accepted the water she offered with a grateful nod. You did not have to do all that, Zara said, looking up at the now secure roof. I know, but I wanted to. Isaiah drank deeply, then set the cup aside. Can I ask you something? Zara tensed. I suppose. Why do you hide your face like that? Tilting your head, keeping your hair forward on one side, the question hit like a physical blow. Zara's hand flew to her scar, covering it instinctively. Because people do not want to see it, because I am hideous. Who told you that? Isaiah's voice had gone hard. Everyone. My mother-in-law. The doctor. Every person who has stared at me with horror since it happened. Isaiah stepped closer, and Zara fought the urge to back away. They were wrong, he said quietly. You are not hideous, Zara. You are a woman who survived something terrible. That scar means you fought death and won. There is no shame in that. You do not understand, Zara whispered, tears threatening. My husband is dead. I am crippled. No man will ever want me again. I was told that very clearly. Then the person who told you that was a fool. Isaiah reached out slowly, giving her time to move away, and gently drew her hand away from her face. I have known you less than a week, Zara Nolan, and already I can see you are strong, intelligent, and braver than most men I have met. Those things do not disappear because of scars. You do not know what you are talking about, Zara said, but her voice lacked conviction. Maybe not, but I know what I see when I look at you, and I see someone worth knowing. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a touch so gentle and unexpected that Zara gasped. Give me a chance to prove it. Prove what? She managed. That you are not unlovable, that you deserve kindness and respect and maybe more if you are willing. Zara pulled her hand away, her heart hammering. You are insane. You do not even know me. Then let me know you. Have dinner with me tonight. Margaret Chen's restaurant makes a decent stew. I cannot, Zara said automatically. Cannot or will not. Both, neither, I do not know. She was flustered, her carefully built walls crumbling. Why would you want to? You could have any woman in this town. I do not want any woman in this town. I want to have dinner with you. Isaiah's storm-gray eyes were steady, certain. One meal, Zara. If you hate every minute, I will finish my business and leave you alone, but give it a chance. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to protect herself from inevitable disappointment and pain. But there was something in Isaiah's gaze, a sincerity she had not encountered in so long, that made her hesitate. One meal, she finally agreed, but I am not promising anything beyond that. Isaiah's smile was like sunrise. That is all I am asking. That evening, Zara stood in her small room above the store, staring at her reflection with something approaching panic. She had not dressed for a man's attention in over a year. She had not wanted to. The woman in the mirror was a stranger, scarred and uncertain. But she had made a promise, and Zara had been raised to keep her word. She chose a simple green dress that brought out her eyes, pinned her hair carefully, and left the scarred side of her face exposed. If Isaiah wanted to know her, he could know all of her, including the damaged parts. If he recoiled, better to find out now. The walk to the restaurant was torturous. Her hip ached, her limp was pronounced, and she felt every eye on the street watching her. But Isaiah was waiting outside, cleaned up and wearing a fresh shirt, and his face lit up when he saw her approach. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You do not have to lie, I am not." He offered his arm, adjusting his pace to match hers without making a show of it as they entered the restaurant. Margaret seated them at a corner table and winked at Zara when Isaiah was not looking. The meal started awkwardly, both of them feeling out the boundaries of this strange new thing between them. But gradually, as Margaret's promised stew arrived and Isaiah started talking about his ranch and the cattle drives he led, Zara found herself relaxing. "I inherited the land from my father 5 years ago," Isaiah explained, breaking apart a piece of bread. "It is not much, but it is mine. 300 head of cattle, good grazing land near the Humboldt River, and enough hands to keep things running when I am on the trail." "You do not sound like most cattle ranchers I have heard about," Zara observed. "You are educated." Isaiah smiled. "My mother was a schoolteacher. She insisted I learn to read and write properly, said it would make the difference between surviving and thriving. She was right. Being able to keep good books, write clear contracts, and negotiate with suppliers has saved me more times than my gun ever has. Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. Fever took her when I was 19. My father followed a year later. I think he died of a broken heart as much as anything else." Isaiah's expression grew distant. "They loved each other deeply. I always swore that if I ever married, it would be for that kind of love or nothing at all." "And have you found it?" Zara asked, not sure why her heart was pounding. "I have not been looking," Isaiah admitted. "Most women around here want a husband who will stay put, build a house in town, and give them respectability. I cannot offer that. My life is on the trail half the year, sleeping under stars and eating dust. It takes a particular kind of person to understand that. It sounds lonely." "It is," Isaiah agreed, his eyes meeting hers. "But I would rather be lonely than settle for something that does not fit." They talked through the meal and long after, the restaurant emptying around them until Margaret finally shooed them out with good-natured insistence. Isaiah walked Zara back to her store, their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. "Thank you for tonight," Isaiah said at her door. "I enjoyed it more than I can say." "I did too," Zara admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. "I did not think I would, but I did." Can I see you again? Before my crew arrives, I will be around Silver Peak for a few more weeks. Zara knew she should say no. She knew that letting Isaiah closer was dangerous, that she was setting herself up for inevitable heartbreak. But the walls she had built so carefully were already cracking, and she was tired of being alone. Yes, she whispered. I would like that. Isaiah's smile was soft in the moonlight. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her scarred cheek. Good night, Zara. She watched him walk away, her hand pressed to where he had touched her, and felt tears streaming down her face. She could not remember the last time someone had touched her scar with tenderness instead of pity or revulsion. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of work and wonder. Isaiah came by the store every day, sometimes to help with heavy lifting or repairs, sometimes just to talk. He told her stories of cattle drives and close calls with storms. She told him about her childhood in Pennsylvania, her love of numbers, and carefully, painfully, about Thomas and the accident. He was a good man, Zara said one afternoon as they sat on the porch of her store, watching the sun paint the desert gold. But I do not think I loved him the way your parents loved each other. Our marriage was arranged by our families. It was comfortable, safe. I cared for him, but it was not the kind of love that songs are written about. Do you feel guilty about that? Isaiah asked gently. Sometimes. He died and I survived. Shouldn't I have loved him more to make his death mean something? That is not how love works. And his death means something because he lived, not because of how you felt about him. Isaiah shifted closer, his shoulder touching hers. You are allowed to have complicated feelings, Zara. Grief is not simple. Were you ever married? She asked, changing the subject from the painful territory of her past. No, came close once, about 4 years ago. Her name was Sarah, and she was the daughter of a banker in Carson City. She was beautiful and charming, and I thought I was in love. Isaiah's jaw tightened. But she wanted me to sell the ranch, move to the city, and take a job in her father's bank. When I refused, she told me I was choosing cows over her. Maybe I was, but I could not give up the life I had built to become someone I was not. Do you regret it? Not anymore. If I had married her, I would not be here now. I would not have met you. He turned to face her fully. Zara, I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. Her heart started hammering. What? I am falling in love with you. The words hung in the desert air, stark and honest. I know it is fast. I know you have every reason to be cautious, but I will not hide how I feel. You are smart and strong and beautiful, and when I am with you, I feel like I am finally home after years of wandering. Zara could not breathe. Isaiah, you do not mean that. You cannot. Look at me. She gestured to her face, her leg. I am broken. You are not broken, Isaiah said fiercely. He took her hands in his, holding them tightly. You are healing. There is a difference. And yes, I see your scars. I see your limp. I also see the way you rebuilt your life from nothing. I see your kindness, your humor, your determination. I see all of you, Zara, and I am telling you that I am falling in love with every part. I am scared, she whispered. So am I. Love is terrifying, but it is also the best thing we can be brave enough to reach for. He brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. You do not have to say anything back. I am not asking you to. I just needed you to know that you are not unlovable. You never were. Zara broke then. All the grief and pain and loneliness she had carried for so long pouring out in wrenching sobs. Isaiah pulled her into his arms, holding her securely while she cried into his chest, murmuring soft words of comfort. When the storm finally passed, she felt wrung out but lighter, as if something poisonous had been drawn from her soul. I do not know if I can love anyone again, she said against his shirt. I do not know if that part of me survived the accident. That is all right. We will figure it out together if you are willing. Isaiah stroked her hair gently. I am not going anywhere, Zara. I will be here for as long as you want me. Even when you are on cattle drives, I will always come back. That is a promise. The days that followed were both easier and harder. Easier because Isaiah's declaration had removed the uncertainty between them, had given them permission to be honest about what was growing. Harder because Zara was discovering that her heart was not as dead as she had thought, and feeling again meant feeling everything, including fear. Isaiah's crew arrived right on schedule, a dozen rough-looking men who nonetheless treated Zara with surprising respect. They filled the store, placing orders and paying cash, and Isaiah stood back and watched with obvious pride as she managed the chaos with efficient grace. Your woman knows her business, one of the hands commented to Isaiah, not knowing Zara could hear. She is not my woman, Isaiah corrected. She is her own woman, but yes, she knows her business better than anyone. Zara felt warmth spread through her chest at the respect in his voice. Thomas had loved her, she supposed, but he had always treated her as a pretty ornament, something to be protected and displayed. Isaiah treated her as an equal, someone capable and strong. That night, after the crew had been outfitted and sent to make camp outside town, Isaiah asked Zara to go for a ride with him. She hesitated, thinking of her hip, but he had anticipated her concern. We will go slow. I have a gentle mare that will not give you trouble. I want to show you something. They rode out into the desert as the sun was setting, Zara's hip aching but manageable, and Isaiah led her to a small valley where a spring fed a surprising growth of cottonwoods and grass. It was an oasis in the barren landscape, peaceful and beautiful. This is part of my land, Isaiah explained, helping her down from the horse with careful hands. When the cattle drives get hard, when I am covered in dust and wondering why I do this, I think about this place. It reminds me that beauty exists even in the hardest country. They walked to the spring, and Isaiah spread a blanket on the grass. They sat together, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, and Zara felt something shift inside her. This man had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. He had looked at her scars and called her beautiful. He had held her while she cried and never made her feel weak for it. Maybe, just maybe, her mother-in-law had been wrong. Maybe she was not damaged beyond repair. Isaiah, she said softly, I think I am falling in love with you too. He turned to her, his eyes bright in the twilight. You do not have to say that just because I did. I am not. I am saying it because it is true. I am terrified and I do not know how this will work, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel it. She took a shaky breath. You have proven to me that I am not broken, that I can still feel and hope and maybe even love again. That is a gift I cannot repay. You do not have to repay it. Love is not a transaction. Isaiah cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing over her scarred cheek with infinite gentleness. Can I kiss you? Zara's breath caught. No one had wanted to kiss her since the accident. She had assumed no one ever would again. Yes, she breathed. Isaiah leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, and pressed his lips to hers. It was soft and sweet and careful, a question rather than a demand. Zara melted into it, her hands clutching his shirt, and felt alive in a way she had forgotten was possible. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. I will court you properly, Isaiah said, his forehead resting against hers. I will write you letters when I am on the trail. I will come back to Silver Peak every chance I get, and when you are ready, if you are ready, I will ask you to be my wife. I am not easy to love, Zara warned. I have nightmares. Some days my hip hurts so badly I can barely walk. I am scarred and damaged and afraid. And I spend half the year away from home. I am stubborn as a mule, and I snore like a freight train. Isaiah countered with a small smile. We all have our flaws, Zara. The question is whether we are willing to love each other despite them, or maybe because of them. I want to try, Zara said. I am scared, but I want to try. That is all I am asking. They stayed at the spring until the moon rose high, talking about the future in careful, hopeful terms. Isaiah told her about his ranch, the house he had built with his own hands, the land he wanted to expand into. Zara told him about her dreams of making the store successful, of building something that was entirely hers. They wove their separate futures together, testing how they might fit, and found more common ground than either had expected. The cattle drive left a week later, and saying goodbye was harder than Zara had anticipated. She stood on the edge of town, watching the dust cloud of the herd disappear into the distance, and felt her heart going with it. But Isaiah had promised to write, and he had never broken a promise yet. The first letter arrived 3 weeks later, brought by a rider passing through. Zara tore it open with shaking hands and read Isaiah's careful script, describing the drive and the weather and how much he missed her. She wrote back immediately, telling him about the store's success and the new inventory she had ordered. It became a rhythm, letters passing back and forth across the Nevada territory, each one building the foundation of their relationship more solidly. 2 months after Isaiah left, Zara received a letter that was different from the others. It was longer, more serious, and it arrived with a small package wrapped in brown paper. She opened the letter first. "Dearest Zara," it began. "I am writing this from a camp near Winnemucca, watching my men settle the herd for the night. The stars are bright, and all I can think about is the night I brought you to the spring, and you told me you were falling in love with me. I have carried those words with me every day since, and they have given me more strength than you know. I have been thinking about the future, about what kind of life we could build together. I know I am not an easy man to love. My work takes me away for long stretches, and the ranch is remote and demanding. But I can promise you this: I will love you fiercely and faithfully for all my days. I will respect your independence and your dreams. I will be your partner in all things, not your keeper. If you can accept that kind of life, if you can see yourself beside me through the hard seasons and the good, then I am asking you to open the package I sent. If not, if this is too much or too soon, send it back unopened and I will understand. Whatever you choose, know that you have changed my life for the better. With all my love, Isaiah." Zara's hands were shaking as she set down the letter and picked up the package. She knew what it was before she opened it. The ring inside was simple but beautiful, a gold band with a small turquoise stone that matched the Nevada sky. It fit perfectly on her finger. She sat down at her desk and wrote the fastest letter of her life. "Yes, 1,000 times yes, come home to me." Isaiah arrived back in Silver Peak 2 weeks later, riding hard and alone, having left his crew to finish the drive without him. Zara was in the store when she heard the thunder of hoofbeats, and she looked up to see him dismounting in a cloud of dust. She ran outside, her limp forgotten, and threw herself into his arms. "You said yes," he breathed into her hair. "Of course I said yes. How could I not?" He kissed her there in the middle of the street in front of God and the whole town, and Zara did not care who saw. She was done hiding, done being ashamed. This man loved her, scars and all, and she loved him back with a fierceness that surprised her. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the church, with Margaret Chen and her husband standing as witnesses. Zara wore a dress of ivory silk that she had ordered specially, and she left her hair down so that her scar was visible. If people wanted to stare, let them stare. She was marrying the man she loved, and nothing else mattered. The ranch was everything Isaiah had promised and more. The house was small but well built, with windows that looked out over rolling grassland. Zara brought her inventory books and business sense to the operation, helping Isaiah organize his accounts and negotiate better prices with buyers. She discovered she had a knack for the business side of ranching, and Isaiah was grateful to have her partnership. The first year was an adjustment. Isaiah was gone for months at a time on the drives, and Zara had to learn to manage the ranch in his absence. But she proved more than capable, earning the respect of the hands through her fair treatment and sharp mind. When Isaiah returned, exhausted and trail-worn, she was there to welcome him home, and their reunions were sweet enough to make the separations bearable. 2 years into their marriage, Zara discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She was 30 years old, and the damage from the accident had led doctors to tell her she might never carry a child to term. But Isaiah held her close and told her they would face whatever came together. The pregnancy was difficult. Zara's hip ached constantly, and she was plagued by sickness and exhaustion. But she was stubborn, and she had Isaiah's support, and she was determined to meet this child they had created. When the labor started on a cold November morning in 1881, it was long and brutal, but Zara had survived worse. She held Isaiah's hand and pushed through the pain, and when she finally heard the sharp cry of a newborn, she wept with relief. "A boy," the midwife announced, placing the squirming infant in Zara's arms. "A healthy baby boy." Isaiah looked down at his son with wonder in his eyes. "He is perfect. You did so well, my love." They named him Jacob after Isaiah's father, and he was indeed perfect. Dark hair like his father, green eyes like his mother, and lungs that could wake the dead. Zara had never known she could love something so much, had never understood how a tiny person could completely rearrange her heart. Motherhood changed her in ways she had not anticipated. The fierce protectiveness, the bone-deep exhaustion, the joy that came from the smallest smile. Isaiah was a devoted father, getting up in the night to walk Jacob when he fussed, changing diapers without complaint, and spending every moment he could holding his son. "I have to leave for the spring drive soon," Isaiah said one evening when Jacob was 3 months old. "But I do not want to go. I do not want to miss anything." "I know," Zara said, shifting Jacob to her other arm, "but we will be here when you get back. And I will write you letters telling you everything he does. Promise, promise." The years rolled on, marked by cattle drives and seasons, by Jacob's first steps and first words. When Jacob was 2, Zara discovered she was pregnant again, a surprise that shocked both of them. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and when she delivered a healthy baby girl in the spring of 1884, Zara felt her family was complete. They named the baby Rose, and she was her brother's opposite in every way. Where Jacob was loud and energetic, Rose was quiet and contemplative. She had Isaiah's storm-gray eyes and Zara's determined chin, and she wrapped both her parents around her tiny finger from day one. Life settled into a rhythm that was both chaotic and deeply satisfying. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Zara's store in Silver Peak, which she had sold to Margaret's daughter, continued to thrive. Jacob grew into a wild, adventurous boy who wanted to be just like his father. Rose toddled after her brother, trying to keep up with his longer legs. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaiah took Zara back to the spring where he had first kissed her. They left the children with a trusted hand and rode out alone, just the two of them. The cottonwoods had grown taller, the grass was green from recent rain, and the spring still bubbled clear and cold. "Do you remember the first time I brought you here?" Isaiah asked, helping her down from her horse. Her limp was still pronounced, her scar still visible, but these things no longer defined her. I remember thinking you were insane for saying you loved me, Zara replied, taking his hand. I remember being terrified and hopeful and not knowing which feeling to trust. And now I know I was right to trust the hope. She turned to face him, this man who had proven her mother-in-law wrong with every word and touch. You saved my life, Isaiah, not in the dramatic way of pulling me from a burning building, but in the way that actually matters. You made me believe I was worthy of love. You showed me that my scars did not make me less, they made me who I am. You gave me a life I never thought I could have. You saved yourself, Zara. I just had the privilege of loving you while you did it. Isaiah pulled her close, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for taking a chance on a stubborn cowboy who spent half his life on the trail. Thank you for seeing me when I had stopped seeing myself. They stood together in their oasis, watching the sun set over the land they had built a life on. Two children slept safely at home, the ranch was thriving, and they had each other. It was not the life Zara had planned when she arrived in Silver Peak, broken and convinced she would never be loved again. It was better. The years continued to pass, gentle and good. Jacob grew into a fine young man, learning the cattle business from his father and the business management from his mother. Rose developed a passion for horses, training and breeding them with an intuitive skill that impressed everyone. The ranch expanded, the herd grew, and the Anderson name became synonymous with quality and fairness throughout Nevada. On the evening of their 20th anniversary, Zara sat on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and rose. Isaiah settled into the chair beside her, their hands linking automatically after 2 decades of practice. "You ever think about that first day?" he asked. "When I walked into your store and you looked ready to throw me out," Zara laughed. "I think about it often. I was so angry at the world, so convinced that my life was over. I could not imagine being happy again. And now I cannot imagine being anything but happy. Oh, we have had hard times. The drought year when we almost lost everything. The winter Rose got sick and we thought we would lose her. Your broken leg from that fall, but we faced all of it together and that made all the difference." She squeezed his hand. "You kept your promise, Isaiah. You loved me fiercely and faithfully through it all. It was easy. You are easy to love." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing the fingers that wore his ring. "I would choose you again, Zara. In every lifetime, in every version of this story, I would choose you." Tears pricked Zara's eyes, the good kind that came from overwhelming gratitude. She thought about the woman she had been, arriving in Silver Peak with nothing but pain and hopelessness. She thought about Thomas and the accident and the cruel words that had nearly destroyed her. And she thought about this man beside her, who had refused to let her believe the lies. "I love you," she said simply. "Thank you for proving them all wrong. I love you too. Always." They sat together as the stars emerged, two people who had found each other in the hardest of places and built something beautiful from broken pieces. Their children's laughter drifted from inside the house, Jacob teasing Rose about something while she retorted with sharp wit. The cattle lowed in the distance, settled for the night. The desert wind carried the scent of sage and possibility. Zara had been told she would never be loved again. But the cowboy beside her, with his patient hands and unwavering faith, had proven that lie wrong with every word and touch. He had shown her that scars did not make her unlovable, they made her real. That limping did not make her weak, it made her a survivor. That being broken and healing again was the bravest thing a person could do. As the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, Zara leaned into Isaiah's shoulder and smiled. This was love, real and true. Not the comfortable affection of her first marriage, but something fierce and deep and enduring. This was the love that songs were written about, the love that survived hardship and distance and doubt. This was the love she had been told she would never have. And it was more than she had ever dared to dream.